Love, exciting and new.
Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever.
It's a love.
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships of Bermudan and British Registry.
This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. There's nothing better than the perfect jean and going out top combo, or an outfit that perfectly matches your plans. Abercrombie's relaxed jean goes with every occasion. Date nights with something lace, or daytime with a cozy sweater. And their barrel jean will surprise you. It's the trend that will become a staple in your wardrobe. Abercrombie denim comes in tons of rises, fits, and washes. Find your perfect pair online or in store.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. It's Stephen Means and Stefan Krajisnik. This is technically going to be your Monday pod, but you're hearing it on a Friday. We're not going to do any pods next week. We're going to take the week and just reset with a lot because it has been a long 6 months. Stefan has been here since the end of July, and it just feels like every other day there's been something, whether it's hires, whether it's JJ, whether it's Will Howard, whether it's football games, whether it's losing to Michigan, whether it's all of a sudden this might be the greatest football team on the planet, right? It's a lot happening, and I think there comes a point where you have to just kind of press the reset button a little bit, especially with all the change we've had at Buckeye Talk over the last 2 years. So we're going to take the next week after this pod and just reset. And then Stefan and I will come back the following Monday. I'm also just going on vacation for a couple of days. That's the obvious. I'm leaving the country.
Listen, if you're going to a place with palm trees and sunshine, you don't have to record a podcast.
Yeah.
That's the rules.
That's mean. Imagine us sitting on here and I just got palm trees in the background and you're in snowy Columbus, like, yeah,
pina colada in your hand.
Yeah. That would be an unhinged. Maybe we might do that one day. Not this time. Stefan and I will come back in a week from Monday, and we'll start diving into some bigger picture stuff, some Big Ten tier stuff. I know obviously the NFL draft the combine is coming upon us, and so we'll talk about that. I know there's 15 people who have been invited from Ohio State. We'll dive into that list on a future pod. For right now.
Wait, who do you think that's not on that list has the best chance of being drafted? If Ohio State's going to break the record, Georgia in 22 had 15 players taken in that draft. That's the record. Yeah. So 15 players invited to the combine. I look at the list, and I think all of them will get drafted. So out of probably
15 for 15, that's impressive in its own right.
Yeah. So I would imagine G. Scott and Josh Fryer are probably the two options of can they be the 16th guy.
I think G. Scott's an intriguing prospect for a football team who is a championship contender already and is looking for a wrinkle with their 7th round pick. So part of me leans that way, but also part of me leans towards Josh Fryer as a 2-year starter at right tackle with some position flexibility, because I don't think he's a surefire tackle in the NFL. He might be a guard, but you can play him outside. Both have a case, so I'll lean. I mean, they carry more offensive linemen on a 53-man roster than tight ends, so I'll lean Josh Fryer just because of that.
I think so too. I think because of the positional need and because of the experience. Like, he played in Chip Kelly's offense, and obviously the NFL respects Chip Kelly's offense. He just got $6 million to go be a coordinator there.
To be fair, hold on. We got to make sure the NFL does respect Chip Kelly. The Raiders respect him so much that they gave him $6 million.
That's true. Not everyone has Raiders money apparently to spend. Yeah. Or they do, but they think it's not worth spending $6 million on a coordinator. Neither here nor there. I think Josh Fryer can say, hey, look at the way I played in this playoff. Look at the way I played in this offense, despite battling injuries throughout a lot of the year. And maybe that could help him out a bit. G is intriguing, though. And frankly, I wonder if the Raiders maybe have a pick in the 7th round and Chip Kelly sees a role in that offense, behind Brock Bowers. Does he go that route? I don't know.
See, now you said the Raiders. Now peaking back up again because the Raiders do things like this all the time. Speaking of which, the full list: Will Howard, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Emeka Egbuka, Donovan Jackson, Seth McLaughlin, Josh Simmons, Ty Hamilton, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Tyleik Williams, Cody Simon, Denzel Burke, Jordan Hancock, and Lathan Ransom were all invited. We'll do deep dives into that as we get closer to the combine in a couple of weeks here.
Welcome to Nada Yada Island.
Next on Metro's Nada Yada Island podcast.
I almost fainted when the 4 new bomb shelves arrived. 4 free Samsung Galaxy A16 5G phones at Metro.
No way.
And finding out the 4th line is free? Oh, things got heated.
That's wild. Join Metro and get 4 free Samsung 5G phones. Only at Metro.
Plus tax. Bring 4 numbers and an ID and sign up for any Metro Flex plan. Not available currently at T-Mobile or have been with Metro in the past 180 days.
Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast here to tell you about Michelob Ultra Courtside. It's getting fans closer to the NBA with a chance to win prizes like courtside seats, a trip to All-Star Weekend, and much more. Check it out at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access, Courtside 24-25 sweepstakes, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 and up. Begins on October 1st, 2024, ends July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/courtside for free entry deadlines, and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
For now, this Monday pod is almost going to be in the same vein as some of the Monday pods we did during the season. This Monday, Leave No Doubt pod that you're getting on a Friday, so you get 4 days to listen to it. A little bit more than that, but kind of we reacted to something that we saw, and it was hot, and it was raw, and that's a weird word choice, but that's what I'm sticking with. And now we've gotten a chance to sleep on it. We've got a chance to dive into it a little bit. And Stefan, now I want to dive into the hire of Matt Patricia as Ohio State's next defensive coordinator. Matt Patricia has not coached in college football since he was a graduate assistant at Syracuse from 2001 to 2003. So he's never actually been an assistant coach at the collegiate level. He has spent the bulk of his career coaching for the New England Patriots in a multitude of different roles. From 2004 to 2005, he was the assistant offensive line coach. From 2006 to 2010, he was the linebackers coach. In 2011, he was the safeties coach. From 2012 to 2017, he was the defensive coordinator. And then he was the Lions coach from 2018 to 2020. He was their head coach. That did not go well. He was 13-29-1 as a head coach. But also, I mean, there's a lot of head coaches who have coached Detroit who haven't gone well. So I'm not going to hold that completely against it. But the point is, it didn't go well as a head coach. And everybody's not meant to be a head coach. Bill Belichick brings him back in as a senior football advisor in 2001. He keeps that role in 2002 while also being the offensive line coach. And then he goes to the Eagles where he's a senior defensive assistant. These assistant advisor roles are essentially at the college football level what QCs and GAs are. It's essentially the same concept. I know at the end of that season, he ends up taking over and calling plays for an Eagles team that wasn't very good at that point. And so there have been people, even in our text, 614-350-3315, who have brought up, yeah, the Eagles defense wasn't very good, but also their team wasn't very good. They had a disappointing year, and so maybe guys had already checked out. Fine. But also, that same defense just won a Super Bowl and harassed the guy who might arguably be, at worst, the third best quarterback of all time, and Patrick Mahomes. And that depends on how you feel about Joe Montana, whether Mahomes is second or third. And so now, he was not coaching anywhere in 2024, and now he is Ohio State's defensive coordinator. Stefan, we came in hot. And the don't like it. Ill. Undo. If you could press the dislike button on social media, that's what we would have done. Dislike. Let's just say, what was your dislike at when the news dropped? From a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most you could possibly have disliked the hire, obviously 1 being the least you could dislike the hire.
I was probably around like a 6.5, 7.
Yeah, it feels like people thought that we were like at a 10. Are you still 6.5, 7 after you've had some time to sleep on it and think about it?
I'm probably closer to like a 5 at this point. I think so. There's a lot of layers to this. There's a lot to unpack, and that's why we're coming on a podcast, because we can talk about it as long as we want and all the different layers. I think where I start is let's start with Matt Patricia specifically and how good we think he is as a defensive coordinator, because we were all under the impression that Guerreri and/or Guerreri/Walton as co-defensive coordinators was the most likely route. That was probably the betting favorite from the moment Jim Knowles signed the dotted line with Penn State. And if it wasn't that, think about some of the names we were mentioning. Hafley, right? Like a proven good in the NFL defensive coordinator right now with the Packers, right? Like we were talking, like Al Golden was the name that was brought up before he went to the Bengals. Brian Haynes, I think that his name is still in my mind. The defensive coordinator in Indiana, like proven college defensive coordinator. Like we were talking about the best defensive coordinators. I mean, Hafley's one of the best in the NFL, but in the college level as well. When you look at Patricia, he wasn't on anyone's list early on because I think we were all under the impression that if Ohio State went a different route, they were swinging big. And I don't want to say that getting Patricia isn't swinging big, but it was a move that you weren't really competing against anyone for. You weren't really, like, he wasn't in high demand. And that makes me really curious about what exactly Ryan Day ended up looking for in this role at the end, because my guess is that after the offensive staff came together, specifically with Brian Hartline being promoted to coordinator and play caller, Fessler's a young quarterbacks coach, Keenan Bailey, Tyler Bowen, those are all young guys. The offensive staff is young. And it's we said the moment Hartline was promoted that Day's going to have to work a bit more with that side of the ball than he did when Chip Kelly was here. Just because of the youth you have there, the inexperience, relatively speaking, that you have there, Ryan Day's going to have to help out with the offense a bit more. So I wonder how much that kind of shifted his thinking from, hey, how about instead of promoting these two guys, how about, specifically with promoting Guerreri, who's 35 to play caller, how about I go the older, more experienced head coach of the defense route? Which is what I think this hire does accomplish, right? You have someone who's been around football for a while, who's called plays, who has experience as a head coach, whether when good or bad, he's got that experience. That seems to maybe fit what Ryan Day was looking for here. And that makes sense. It makes sense. But initially, I didn't know if Patricia was still the right guy to fill that role. The question I have with Patricia that I guess maybe made me most worrisome at first, and let me know where you stand on this. I understand why he's not coaching at North Carolina right now. Like I brought up the point, and I've seen people bring up the point, well, if Bill Belichick liked him so much, why didn't he bring him to North Carolina? He hired his son as the defensive coordinator. The reason Matt Patricia is not there is because of nepotism. But if we're talking about the bigger picture, he hasn't had a full-time coordinator role since he left. It's been 5 years since the Lions fired him. Why hasn't anyone wanted to hire him as a defense coordinator? Why was Ohio State seemingly the only team interested in him this offseason? Like, why wasn't he coaching in 2024? Like, there's questions I have of why weren't NFL teams, because let's be honest, when you get a job in the NFL, whether it be an assistant, a coordinator, or specifically a head coach, NFL recycles coaches like crazy. I mean, Matt Eberflus just got fired by the Bears after a horrible stint. He's already the Cowboys defensive coordinator. Like,
nobody loves failed head coaches as their next coordinators like the NFL does.
Yeah. I mean, Dennis Allen got fired by the Saints. Now he's a defensive coordinator with the Bears? Like,
yeah.
The NFL recycles coaches like crazy. That's why I don't understand. This guy has won 3 Super Bowls as an assistant. He's worked as a defensive coordinator. He's worked as a head coach. What's missing here? And maybe it's the stuff that's been mentioned about personality and getting along with people. I don't know. I haven't met him, so I'm not going to say whether or not he's a good person or got a good personality. I think when you lose, there's a lot of people who aren't going to like you. And because what is Bill Belichick is he the nicest, most pleasant guy out there? No, but guess what? He won a lot of Super Bowls and he won every year, and the players who were with him liked him. You know why? Because they won. So I'm not going to say, if there's Lions and Eagles players out there who have said things about Matt Patricia, well, some of that probably has to do with the fact that you weren't making the playoffs and you weren't succeeding in the playoffs in the Eagles case, right? Like that taints how you're remembered, how you're talked about. So that's just the big question I have on Patricia is what's happened in these last 4 or 5 years that he hasn't been in high demand. Because think about Vrabel. He's done with the Titans. He goes and he does kind of the similar role that we've seen Patricia do of the like assistant to the assistant, like an advisor, analyst, whatever you want to call it, quality control with the Browns, and immediately got a head coaching job again after that, and was going to be in high demand for a head coaching job. And that's because he's a good head coach. But if Patricia is as good of a defensive coordinator as his time with the Patriots suggests, then why hasn't he been in demand like that? I understand if he would have taken 1 year off after his time with the Lions, but it's been 4 or 5 years.
I like the idea of what this hire is. I also get the idea of what this hire is because I agree. I don't know if Matt Patricia, who didn't have a great tenure as a head coach and has spent a lot of time working for one man and wasn't a defensive coordinator and wasn't working in football, at least in a prominent way in 2024. I don't know if he's a better decision than just hiring from within with Matt Guerrieri and Tim Walton. I think in terms of the Matt Guerrieri, Tim Walton co-defensive coordinator situation, and by the way, Tim Walton is co-defensive coordinator now, and Matt Guerrieri is the passing game coordinator. So they also did get raises and promotions.
And we should mention that Walton does have a very brief, but he does have a history with Patricia. They were both at Syracuse when Patricia was a GA and Walton was, I think he was coaching either DBs or corners or safeties. He was doing something in the secondary at Syracuse. So there is a little bit of a connection between those two, at least from kind of their past and the people that they worked under.
I think what happened was you had a good sense that it was probably going to be that decision. And then Matt Patricia popped up in Columbus. And it was like, oh, okay. Because you and I even texted about it. It's like, is this real or is Day just doing his due diligence to make sure he can say to himself that he didn't leave any stones unturned? And then, what is it, less than 48 hours later, Matt Patricia is the defensive coordinator. So I do think there was a bit of a shock value of how quickly this all formed. And so because of how quick it was, maybe there's an element of, that's what you ended up with? Of all the choices, that's what you ended up with? And maybe in that shock value that came off and how we were talking about this yesterday. So I do apologize for that. But kind of. I don't have to agree with Ryan Day every decision he makes. But if I'm wrong about this, then I'll come on this pod and I'll say I'm wrong. And if I'm right, I'll say I'm right. That's how this is supposed to go. But I understand essentially just replacing Jim Knowles and the concept of what Jim Knowles was. Jim Knowles was the defensive coordinator who didn't really recruit, who was brought in here to scheme. And just like at Oklahoma State, it took a couple of years for that defensive scheme to sit in. Here's the qualifications for Jim Knowles when he got here. When you look at his Oklahoma State defenses, when he first got to Oklahoma State, it was 2018. That Oklahoma State defense ranked 99th in yards per play nationally. That's the first year of Jim Knowles. Year 2, 2019, they jumped up to 81st in yards per play allowed. In 2020, they jumped up again to 32nd in yards per play allowed. And then his final year, that's when they turned into an elite defense. They were 5th in the country in yards allowed per play. And that's what made him the hot commodity in a situation where, oh, this is the best guy for Ryan Day to go get him. And he went and got him. And just like when he was at Oklahoma State, it took a couple of years for this defense to get elite. They were 37th nationally in yards per play in year 1. They started on a higher floor because it's Ohio State talent versus Oklahoma State talent. But you start off there, 37th nationally. In 2023, that's when they pops up their 3rd nationally in yards per play. And obviously this past season, they're 1st in yards per play. So just like at Oklahoma State, it took a couple years. The years were sped up because you're dealing with NFL talent versus Oklahoma State, who might have 1 or 2 guys who are NFL talent. So if I covered Penn State, as good as Penn State is this year, don't expect your defense to just be special overnight. Though Penn State, again, is starting from a higher place than where Ohio State was in 2022 because Penn State had one of the best defenses in the country last year. So it will be sped up. Instead of taking 3 years like it did at Ohio State, instead of taking 4 years at Oklahoma State, maybe it takes 7 games for Penn State. But back to Matt Patricia. Why does that matter? Maybe it doesn't take that long because, again, we're dealing with a different level of talent. But Jim Knowles was here to scheme. He wasn't here to recruit, which is why all the defensive assistants are elite recruiters. Tim Walton's an elite recruiter. James Laurinaitis is very quickly shown that he's an elite recruiter. Larry Johnson is constantly going to have to battle against the fact that he is older and people are going to be whispering in kids' ears that maybe he won't be there their entire career. Which is funny because they said the same thing to Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau and they just walked out the door. They said the same thing to Tyreek Smith. They said the same thing probably to Chase Young. And Larry Johnson was here before they got here and he's still here after them. And I'm sure that's what they were saying to Execution. In fact, I know that because in an interview on signing day before he got here, he was talking about the fact that he just wasn't sure about the Larry Johnson and how long he was going to be around. Ironically enough, the team he was thinking about flipping to was Alabama, who then lost their coach 2 months after signing day that year. So that's Larry Johnson's mountain to climb every single year is kids being told maybe he's not going to be here for your full 4 years just for him to be here the full 4 years. So we'll see if Larry is still here, not this year, though it does seem like this staff is pretty set and Larry Johnson is going to be here for at least another year. So year 2 of Edric Houston and Larry Johnson is still here. And the guy he thought he was going to flip to is working at ESPN right now. So all those elite recruiters allowed Jim Knowles to just scheme. Everybody else brought the ingredients to the table, and it was up to Jim Knowles, the chef, to create a dish. That seems like that's Matt Patricia's role here, is everybody else go gather up ingredients, Matt Patricia cooks them. But also, even if he has never really recruited before, even if it's not why he's here, it does help if you can walk into a kid's house or walk into a school and toss 3 Super Bowl rings on the table. It helps. It doesn't, like, regardless of what his role was and all those, it helps that he can go, here's my Super Bowls, but also I'm coordinating the team that just won a national championship. That helps. So that's a positive for Ohio State.
Yeah. It's a bit of a power move with some name recognition and accolades for sure. I think that's going to stand out to recruits, no doubt. And I think what's tricky is I think people aren't sure how to talk about his time with the Patriots because there's no denying the reason the Patriots won the Super Bowls they did is because of Bill Belichick and because of Tom Brady. And frankly,
they had some elite defenses.
Yeah. And some elite defenses, but Belichick is a defensive coach. Like he played a big part in that. So I get it. I understand if you have some reservations of asking yourself, well, he hasn't succeeded much when he wasn't under Belichick. I get that. But he played a big part in those successes as well. So to say he's just a bad coordinator simply because his success came with Belichick and the Patriots, I think is probably a bit unfair to Patricia because Belichick had him in different roles. I mean, you listed off some of them. I mean, he had him working on the offensive side of the ball when he came back after the time with the Lions. So Belichick obviously has a ton of respect for this guy. So yeah, those accolades and name recognition is definitely there. And I think that's going to help Ohio State for however long he's here.
With that being said, I just said elite defenses. Yards per play is kind of hard to find with the NFL sometimes with how they do stats. But yards per game is typically how they do the ranked of the defenses in the NFL. Here are his ranked defense since 2012. And that's the first year he was a defensive coordinator at New England, and it's up until the 3 years of his time in Detroit. First year as a defensive coordinator, the Patriots have the 25th best defense in the country. I mean, in the NFL. 2013, the 27th best defense in the NFL. 2014, the 13th best defense in the NFL. 2015, the 9th best defense in the NFL. 2016, the 8th best defense in the NFL. 2017, we are closer to 2027 than we are 2017. That's crazy. Yeah. 2017, 29th. So it plummets. 2018, his first year with the Lions, 10th. Okay, so defensive head coach, defense is pretty decent, even if the team wasn't very good. And then his last 2 years there, 2019, they were 31st, and 2020, they were 32nd. So this idea that Matt Patricia is this elite defensive mind, he's a fine defensive mind at the NFL level. I'm keeping that in mind. But he's a fine defensive mind who also, to your point, worked for a man who is a defensive-minded head coach. So it's essentially, he's what Chip Kelly was for Ryan Day this year. Really good play caller. He's also not, he's running somebody else's offense. Matt Patricia, pretty good play caller, running somebody else's defense. In the 3 years he was running his own defense where he was the man in charge, 10th, 31st, 32nd. I'm just saying, we have to take in all the facts here. Because the facts are, that's not elite. That's good. Now, at Ohio State, can it be elite? Sure, 100%. He's dealing with 5 stars and top 100 recruits all over the place, even if they're young and inexperienced. But we have to, great defensive mind, and 25th, 27th, 13th, 9th, 8th, 29th, 10th, 31st, and 32nd don't go together. So we can't live in this world where Ryan Day won a championship, so he's just immune from us ever thinking, maybe that wasn't the right decision. And if we're wrong, we'll be wrong. But to the point we said to start this all off, because Ryan Day has won a national championship now, I think you referred to it as like flexing a little bit.
That's the benefit of the doubt.
Benefit of the doubt, that's what this move is. Okay. Maybe Ryan Day and Matt Patricia sat down this week, and maybe Ryan Day didn't go into that meeting thinking, this is who I'm going to hire as my guy. In fact, I would bet 50 cents. I'm not betting more than that.
That's gum.
I would just wonder if Ryan Day went into that meeting just, I'm going to keep an open mind. I think I know what I'm going to do at this position, but I'll keep an open mind. This is a Belichick guy, so I'll keep an open mind. And Matt Patricia blew him away in the interview. Because that's Carlos Loughlin. That's what happened there. I asked him about it. They said that Carlos was like the 7th or 8th running backs coach that they had interviewed, and he just blew him away so much that it was like, oh yeah, this is our guy. And I'm wondering if that's what happened with Ryan Day and Matt Patricia, because I don't know how well they know each other before this. He essentially it seems like an outside hire where the interview probably went very well, and he had enough good references, starting with the greatest NFL coach ever, that Ryan Day was sold. And if that's the case, then I'm a little intrigued. I'm a little intrigued by what was said. And if we see that play out, even if it's Ryan Day taking a shot, and because he now has a ring, he can take that shot and we can give it some benefit of the doubt that Ryan Day knows what he was doing. Because we have to be honest, if Ryan Day made this hire 12 months ago, no one would be looking at you crazy for saying this is a crazy hire.
Yeah, no doubt. I think winning a national title definitely, changes that perspective of things. And so this is what I had a decent amount of conversation with our texters last night, 614-350-3315, about this, because I sat on it for a little bit. I thought about it for a little bit. I ate some dinner, had some nice dinner, and then I started texting. I let my mind rest for a little bit. Everyone's in a better mood after dinner.
Sure.
You're kind of sitting there and be like, I just had a nice dinner. Like, what's it matter if the defensive coordinator is bad? I'm just kidding. And the gist of the conversation, and I wrote about it as well on what, I don't even know what day it is, on Thursday morning. This hire is going to be a good amount about Matt Patricia and his skills as a defensive coordinator. It's also going to be a good amount about Ryan Day and where this program is under Ryan Day. Because early in his tenure, every hire mattered. Every hire was, it seems almost very consequential. Every decision, right? Like last year, hiring Bill O'Brien and then hiring Chip Kelly was like seismic in terms of how big of a decision that was, and who do you bring in to take a role that Ryan Day had never really given up before. And now, after winning a national title, and what I believe is a program that has a very solid foundation, culture, whatever you want to call it. I know a lot of those words get tossed around when we talk about programs, but there's no denying that the culture at Ohio State is a very strong spot, and the foundation is in a very good spot, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree.
Because there's a lot of programs that they lose players left and right, because of NIL, because of the portal, and
Yeah.
part of it is Ohio State has a reputation of developing guys, but most programs lose Caden Curry, right?
I would say there are a lot of players who are currently finally going to get their chance to be starters. Caden Curry being one of them, Jermaine Masters being one of them. I mean, shoot, Kenyatta Jackson's from South Florida.
Right.
There's a lot of guys who are finally getting their shot here where I agree with you. If they were at other programs, there's a very good chance that they don't make it to year 4.
Right. So all of that is in place. The coaching staff is in a good spot. The foundation, the culture, all that's in a good place. That's what Saban had. And I understand it's a little bit unfair to Ryan Day to say, okay, can you do what Saban did?
No, it's not anymore. Not anymore. And let me tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. I don't know if you told this story on the pod yet, but when we were at the championship celebration, and I was just, the way the stadium is designed, they've got all the championship kind of, it's not really a banner, it's metal. And I'm like, I'm just speaking out loud. I'm not saying Ryan Day is going to win 12 national titles, but I'm like, so what happens if they just run out of room for Heisman Trophy winners or national champions? It's just the way it's set up. It's eventually going to hit a scoreboard. So I'm like, what happens if they ever run out of things? What if Ryan Day just goes on a run? He goes, he just won. Stefan goes, he just won one championship.
I really looked at Steven. I was like, 2024 isn't even up there yet.
Yeah.
They haven't even updated it yet.
He's like, can you chill? And I'm like, I mean, you're right. Yes. And then I wake up Thursday morning on the site, cleveland.com/OSU. And guess whose name is in the first 20 words of a story written by Stefan Krajisnik?
I think it was in the first 5 words of the story. I bet
and on top of that, this Friday podcast that you're listening to, he's about to make an analogy where he compares him to Nick Saban.
Listen, and here's why I understand why that's unfair to do. Getting to that level is almost impossible.
Yeah.
But it's what every coach strives for. You strive to be the best. You strive to be the best. So, like, Ryan Day is never going to come out and say, I want to be Nick Saban, but that's the goal, right? You want to be Nick Saban. You want to be the best of the best. You want to, I mean, he's talked about wanting to be Woody Hayes. He wants to have multiple championships at Ohio State. Like, that's the expectation he has for himself. Why did Saban succeed? We'll talk the talent. Ryan Day has that. There's no doubt. Ohio State's going to recruit top 5, top 10 in the country every year that Ryan Day is here. They have for however many years running. That's not going to change, especially in the NIL and the portal era. That's not going to change. But Saban is credited a lot with his kind of rehabilitation of wayward coaches, bringing in guys as coordinators who weren't good head coaches. Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, Bill O'Brien was his coordinator for a bit. Like, the list goes on and on. But that's not why he won. Because if Lane Kiffin had come in and not been a great coordinator, would Alabama still have won? Yeah, they would have been 10-2 at worst. And in the 12-team college football playoff, you're getting into the playoff. Or in the 12-team era, you're getting into the playoff. So if Ryan Day has built this program to the place where we think it is, and does it lead to 7 national titles? Maybe not. But could it lead to 2, 3? Yeah, absolutely. Because that's the foundation, the culture, everything is in place. He's put a staff and a roster around Matt Patricia that makes me think, unless he's the worst defensive coordinator ever, and I don't think he is, I think he's probably middle of the pack, an average defensive coordinator based on his history and those numbers that you just mentioned, everything is around Matt Patricia to succeed. And if he decides in a year or two that he's done enough at Ohio State and he wants to take an NFL job again, first of all, that means the tenure has gone well. Second of all, the next hire that Ryan Day makes is going to be the same thing. If you have everything in place, it's going to work. Kiffin and Sarkisian, it all worked because Nick Saban was there. And they were coming into a program where it was going to be very hard to fail. Lane Kiffin was never going to come in and Alabama suddenly goes 7-5, 8-4, and is not competing for a national title because Nick Saban was there. So is Ryan Day Nick Saban yet? No. But has he built the program in place and to some extent inherited like, I know Alabama wasn't in the best place where Saban came in. They're one of the blue bloods.
Yeah, they're supposed to be.
So I'm not going to say Urban Meyer was born or Ryan Day was born on third base, but he inherited a good situation, which is fine. There's a reason there's like 10 programs in the country who consistently win at a high level throughout the history of college football. That's just how this sport works. But Ryan Day has this team and this program in a spot where, as much as we can talk about Matt Patricia and what we think this is going to be, I don't think it can possibly be a disaster because this is what Ryan Day has gotten it to. And he's built in a spot where I think Matt Patricia is going to succeed. And if Matt Patricia succeeds and leaves in 2 years and then is a bad defensive coordinator with like the Jaguars, I'm still going to look at this and say, yeah, he was a good defensive coordinator at Ohio State because Ohio State put a ton around him to ensure that he was going to be good. He's got recruiters. He's got good coaches. He's got players. He's got a head coach. Everything is very stable around him to make me think that whichever direction Day had gone here, I might question it. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at it saying it's probably going to work out fine at worst.
There's no disaster hire he could have made. They had bad defensive coordinators. That whole situation was terrible in 2020, and they got to the national championship game. That whole situation was terrible in 2020. He took play calling responsibilities from someone 2 games into the season. They went 11-2 and won the Rose Bowl. And their there is still. You're right. There is still a base level floor here that's super, super high, even if you make a bad hire. Which is why Saban isn't a bad example. Because what is the difference between Nick Saban and other coaches who are in the similar position that Ryan Day is in, where they're out of blue blood, where there is a basement level floor that you can have? Well, the right hire isn't the difference between a team that goes 8-4 and 12-0. It's the difference between the team who wins the national championship and loses in the semifinal. That's all this we're talking about right now. That's what we're saying. He's hires when he got Sarkisian and how that developed. By the time because Sarkisian had been in the building a couple of times. He was in the building and then he left to go be Atlanta's OC for a couple of years, and he came back into the building. And in 2020, they won a national title and they're dominant that year. Same thing with Lane Kiffin. Kirby Smart for Nick Saban is essentially what Brian Hartline is for Ryan Day in terms of
the comparisons are there of Saban had Kirby under him for a while, his side of the ball.
Yeah.
Hartline is exactly that. It feels like. And on the opposite side of the ball, Saban was hiring
full autonomy at all times. Full autonomy. He would check in if things weren't going right, but full autonomy. There's so many parallels. Nick Saban just won 7 national championships, so as soon as you say his name, people are going to get turned off by it. So whether it ends up with the same level of tangible success in Ryan Day 25 years from now, we know him as the head coach who won 6, 7, 8 national titles. That comes down to, did you win an individual football game? And those can be coin flips, right? There's so many games already of the Ryan Day era that are coin flips. The 2019 Fiesta Bowl is a coin flip. The 2022 Sugar Bowl, coin flip, right? A couple of these Michigan games have been coin flips. There's not a lot of games.
And then the win against Texas. I mean, if the ball doesn't bounce his way. I mean, he talked about it the other day on an interview.
The 2 of the 3 games against Notre Dame came down to like 1 or 2 plays. That's just kind of, when you're in matchup games, that's kind of the case. So are you building the foundation Nick Saban built? And I think that is a yes, to your point. He has built a foundation where, again, the floor is, what's the worst record right now, as we're sitting here, that we think Ohio State's going to have next year?
The absolute worst, I think, would be like 9-3.
And that is dependent on
James Franklin doing something that he never does.
James Franklin doing something he literally never does. Arch Manning is actually what people think he is, which I still am not 100% sure about. But that also might depend on if Julian Sand is or isn't what we think he is. So that's a wash. And then last year, legitimately being a rebuilding year for Michigan. So those are Ohio State's potential 3 losses. It's matchup games. Do I think they're going to go 9-3? No, I do not. Do I think they'll go 10-2? Maybe. I don't know. But 10-2 gets you in the playoffs now. So, okay. That's your 4. Win 10 games and you're in. If you're in the Big Ten or the SEC, if you win 10 games, you're making the playoff 90% of the time. So I'm with you. This is... when I say I am not sure about this hire, I'm not talking about for the other 9 games. I'm talking about the matchup games. I'm talking about because there's not really a bunch of experience. Though you can say the same thing about Matt Guerrieri had he gotten the job. So much of what he has done has been linked to he spent so much time with Jim Knowles. So it goes both ways. This one happened so quickly that I don't think we were able to wrap our minds around it before it was officially a thing. And now here it is, officially a thing. And it makes you wish you were inside the office when Ryan Day and Matt Patricia were talking. Let's take a quick break, and then I want to bring up one other name to you that I think this might be like. And unfortunately, I have to bring up their rival in order to make the comparison. So we'll get to that when we come back from the break here on Buckeye Talk.
You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
We're back on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means and Stefan Krajisnik. This is your Monday pod on a Friday. It's also your last pod for about a week. We'll be back. No, we're not going away forever. It's just we need to breathe for a second, and I'm going to be.
And we'll be on the text.
Get the text 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. There shouldn't be any news over the next week, so I don't know if you'll. Yeah, we're not expecting anything, but this is. I mean, college football is in a weird spot. So
I will say a plug for our subtext line. So before I had started this job, I never really used subtext at my previous jobs. I never really had much exposure to it. And it's been kind of cool getting to know it, getting to use it a bit these last 6 or 7 months. And Wednesday night after the Patricia thing was actually one of my favorite days. I was going back and forth with a few texters, not back and forth in terms of like arguing, but like having conversations back and forth because there was clearly a lot of people that wanted to talk about this hire, had a lot of thoughts that they wanted to get out. And I had thoughts as well that I wanted to get out. So highly encourage getting the text 614-350-3315. It's a really cool platform. And listen, I'm with you with a lot of our texters of Twitter has become a weird place and it's very hard to have normal conversations without bots chiming in, and message boards sometimes can get chaotic too. The texts are really nice because it kind of, like sometimes I'm just sitting there and it feels like I'm just texting someone, like I'm texting a friend on subtext. So I highly recommend getting it. It's a really cool way to communicate and talk Ohio State football with us. We communicate with you, and it's a space where I promise, unless Andrew turns on us, it won't sound like a bot is responding to you, and you're not going to get random spam sent to you.
It's just great to be able to have a normal conversation without a lot of the craziness or feeling like someone's just trying to get likes and retweets for what they're saying. It's great to do that. Okay, here's my last example I want to use. I am skeptical of the hire, but I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt because Ryan Day has a championship ring on his finger.
And Patricia has 3.
And Patricia has 3. But more important, Ryan Day's earned the benefit of the doubt. I'm allowed to say I'm skeptical, but I can also, in that same sentence, say I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt because a guy who just spent the entire year going, our mantra for the year is leave no doubt, did exactly that. They left no doubt. Unless you're a Michigan fan, which who cares right now? We get it. They need to be Michigan, but they're also the national champs right now. Let them celebrate. Did you know there were 2 Wink Martindales?
I did not.
So there's a guy named Winston Conrad Wink Martindale. They're both their nicknames, but he is a actor and a DJ. He works in the entertainment field.
DJ Wink.
DJ Wink is a dope name. The problem is that's not the Wink I was looking for, which is a crazy sentence, but that's not the Wink I was looking for. I was looking.
Even was 700 words into a Wink Martindale feature, and he forgot that he was writing about a DJ.
Yeah. I was looking for Don Martindale from Dayton, Ohio, who also is nicknamed Wink Martindale. who, again, different stage in their coaching development, right? Sharon Moore's entering year 2, and his first year was essentially a rebuild. Ryan Day took over a team where can you keep the train moving while also upgrade all of its facilities? But, oh yeah, they're changing the tracks ahead of you, so you need to pay attention to that too. And he's done a fine job of that. Wink Martindale, before he became Michigan's defensive coordinator in 2024, had not been in college football since 2003, when he was Western Kentucky's defensive coordinator and linebackers coach from 2000 to 2003. Before that, he was the DC and linebackers coach at Western Illinois. Before that, he was the special teams coordinator and linebackers coach at Cincinnati. And before that, he was a GA at Notre Dame. And before that, he was a DC at Defiance. But he had spent 20 plus years, essentially, in the NFL with the Raiders as a linebackers coach, Denver Broncos as a linebackers coach, and then he was the Broncos DC, the linebacker coach at the Baltimore Ravens, and then the DC for the Ravens, and then he was the DC for a New York Giants team who wasn't very good for 2 years. And he got to Michigan, and Michigan was elite on defense, despite losing some key pieces on defense. So that's my other side of this coin of what can this look like? Do I think there is a route where this takes where it's like, ugh, not great? Yes. But also you might be able to chalk that up to young, experienced guys learning on the fly, as much as it is about Matt Patricia. But there is also a world that exists where Matt Patricia comes in here and he's Wink Martindale. And Edric Houston and Caden McDonald are awesome on the interior. Davison Igmanosin and Jermaine Matthews and Aaron Scott and maybe Devin Sanchez working in there are awesome at corner. Caleb Downs is still Caleb Downs. One of those other two safeties, whether it's Malik Hartford and Jalen McClain, take that next step. Sonny Styles is awesome. Arvell Reese is everything you and I already think. There is a world that exists where Matt Patricia comes in here where, as you were talking about, the environment is already set. You just have to come. All the ingredients are already on the table. They're all from Whole Foods, high quality, right? And you just got to put them in the pot and cook them. And this is a wonderful Thanksgiving meal. I would say, I was at a 7.5, not like this higher. When we did a quick video about this that we plopped at the beginning of a podcast about me winning a draft. Because remember, that's what mattered the most that day. I'm at like a 3 of I don't like this hire because now I'm skeptical for good reason. But all the other evidence on the table suggests that for starters, the worst this is going to go is maybe 9-3. Best case scenario, I don't want to say this team is better than last year's team because that just is too hyperbole the other way. But they're just as good as last year's team was, with a chance to be even better because maybe they don't lose to Michigan as well. So maybe they're, instead of 14-2, they go 15-1 and win a national title. I think all of that is, if I had to choose what was more likely, 9-3 or 16-0, where I sit right here. It's 16 and you have to take the field. But what's more likely? They don't make the playoff and they lose 3 games versus they're playing in the national championship game again. I think I might go with the latter.
I would agree, yeah.
So we're not haters.
We're not haters. I understand when you have questions and when you're skeptical, it kind of might come across as you just think it's a completely terrible move. We're not on that side. Our questions are about Matt Patricia as a defensive coordinator, just because he in that role, I don't want to say he's not proven because he's won the Super Bowls, but he's not proven recently. It's football is a what have you done for me lately business. It always has been, it always will be. And recently, he just hasn't had the titles and the success to give you a lot of confidence about him specifically as a defense coordinator. That's where some of the questions come from. But do I think that means that he's not going to succeed at Ohio State? Is absolutely not. I would not. It would not surprise me one bit if in a year or two he got a job in the NFL because he kind of rediscovered himself and succeeded at Ohio State, and suddenly someone's looking at him being like, all right, maybe maybe Matt Patricia is a good defensive coordinator. Maybe that stint between 2018 and 2024, maybe that's in the past. Maybe he learned something at Ohio State. Because, Chip Kelly hasn't been in the NFL in a while. He did a lot of good at Ohio State, and it gave some teams confidence. And Chip is a lot more proven because he won at Oregon and New Hampshire, and he didn't win, as an offensive coordinator for Bill Belichick specifically. But you can do things at Ohio State to really rejuvenate your career. Ohio State, it doesn't need to become the Nick Saban or the Ryan Day school of, rehabbing wayward coaches, but it can become a spot where people come in, they succeed, and they rejuvenate their career a little bit.
What if that's
Patricia's that?
What if that's Ryan Day's new thing? To bring up Saban again, but it's not quite to that level. But on offense, there seems to be a level of continuity, and again, some of that is because it's his side of the ball, so you feel you're around those guys more, or at least you have been, because he's only a year removed from play calling, so he just has a better idea of how Keenan Bailey and Brian Hartline and Mike Saline, when he was still the guys who were developed and promoted for him with it, he just has a better idea of what they are, while also it's his side of the ball. So the break glass in case of emergency is give me the play sheet.
Yeah, I agree. We'll just keep doing the same thing because at this point we're leading into it and we're just going to do it.
The reason I'm even saying it is because you said maybe Matt Patricia's only here for a year. Well, Chip Kelly was only here for a year. He used it to go to the NFL.
Right.
What if Matt Patricia's doing the same again? The timeline of how this went is fascinating to me. Whose idea was it? Did Ryan Day reach out to people and try to get in touch with Matt Patricia? Did Matt Patricia try to get in touch with Ryan Day? Because Matt Patricia looked at what Chip Kelly did and went, I can do that. I can spend a year, just getting my swing right? Getting back in the game, showing myself I still got it. Stephen Curry is going to be 60 years old. One day he's going to walk on a basketball court and go, cash, I still got it, baby. And he's going to walk off. What if that's what Matt Patricia is doing? Getting the wheels back turning at a place that's got high-level NFL talent, and then he's out the door. Now, does a coach want that? Of course not. A head coach would like some continuity and would like someone to stick around for 3 years the way Jim Knowles did. But I also, in this world of Matt Patricia's never had autonomy the way he is right now. As a coordinator, as a head coach, obviously he did, and it didn't go well. He didn't have full autonomy with the Patriots because his boss is also specializing in his side of the ball. He is going to have full autonomy in a way that I don't think he has ever truly had, because Ryan Day is an offensive-minded head coach who, if he's sitting in your meeting, it's because you just gave up 31 points to Oregon. So that's where the skepticism comes in. Though, I don't think Matt Guerrieri has ever had autonomy the same way. So we could have been saying the same thing about him, because even when he was at Indiana, defensive-minded head coach with Tom Allen. So it's the same thing. That is where my skepticism, it comes from simply, you are the head coach of the defense. That's Ryan Day's term. If he shows up, it's because he needs to do his job as the head coach and make sure people are still doing their jobs right. Because you can't give up 31 points to Oregon again. You can't give up 35 to Texas week 1 and then not expect Ryan Day to be sitting in there on Tuesday going, what the heck happened? That's his job to do that. And that's not a shot at anybody. That's any head coach's job, especially when it's the side of the ball that you don't specialize in, is to be involved and make sure the wheels keep turning. Matt Patricia doesn't have to worry about culture. He doesn't have to worry about offense, which at times he's had to do, right? Whether as a head coach or because that's the position of the ball, the position he was coaching. All he has to worry about is scheming up Saturday. And I think that ceiling is super high. I'm just not sure how high the floor is for him as a play caller, even if the talent makes the floor at least decently high in that situation. But I'm open. I am fully open to this is going to go well. Matt Patricia is going to be a defensive coordinator in the NFL next year, and Ryan Day is going to be doing the song and dance all over again. And maybe it plays out the same way it did on offense, where Matt Guerrieri was maybe ready to take it this year. but let's give it another year and then give it to him. That's what happened with Brian Hart. Could Brian Hartline have been calling plays last year? Maybe. Maybe he could have been calling plays. But was Ryan Day ready to hand that over to someone who'd never done it before? The first time he was not going to be the play caller? Probably not. So you give it to Bill O'Brien, who left, and you gave it to Chip, which also gave Brian Hartline another year to see what it looks like and be extra prepared. So now it wasn't even a question. Ryan Day gave it up to him. So I'm wondering, similar timeline with the defensive coordinator situation.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I'm curious, when do we start the CJ Hicks hype train then? Because that's
today.
Because Matt Patricia he's going to be scheming. He's going to be doing the football.
I'm planting.
He likes multiple fronts. He likes to change things up.
Yeah, which again, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall, because I feel like there's just buzzwords that Ryan Day heard, and there were alarms going off in his head of like, maybe I wasn't thinking about this, but yeah, I like this. Come run my defense.
I'd like to think that Matt Patricia had like no intentions of being a college defensive coordinator, and then he watched the Notre Dame game, was like, wait, who's number 2? wait, that guy's a safety? Calls up Bill Belichick. Hey, there's this guy, Ryan Day. He's from the New England area. You happen to have his phone number by chance?
There's also an interview that's been going around with him it's not the thing he did with Edelman. It was something else where he was like, I like where college football is headed because it feels like it's free agency every single year, which I thought was funny because every coach who's in college football is saying the exact same statement, but just with a very different tone. They're all like, it's free agency. It's not even every single year. It's every 6 months there's free agency in college football. And he's just like, yo, yeah, sign me up. So I'm at a 3, and that's all skepticism. But maybe this might be a perfect marriage that even Ryan Day wasn't thinking about when he went into that meeting. But how quickly this all moved, it seems like it might be. So I whenever we talk with Ryan Day, that's all my questions. And that's not true. I have plenty of other things I would also like to ask. But one of my main ones is, can you just walk us through the timeline of Matt Patricia becoming your defensive coordinator, and how vital was that meeting?
It's funny too, Matt Patricia saying the stuff about free agency. He's also coming into a job where like he doesn't have to worry about it too much.
No,
like, I'm sure he's going to play a pretty decent role like in the portal probably, but he's not going to have to recruit high school guys a ton. Like he's probably not going to have to recruit a ton out of the portal. So that'll be nice for him. It's like, yeah, I like this, but I also don't have to deal with it, so it's fine.
I wonder if his job in the Hard Knocks for the Giants was eye-opening for a lot of reasons. But one of the things I think that was cool that we got to see was them bringing in coordinators and going, this is the type of body type I need. This is the type of player I need for this. They weren't necessarily picking the exact player, but it was a lot of, these are the descriptions of what I need to run my defense.
Yeah.
And on the recruiting trail, with the way Ryan is going about these coordinator positions, not necessarily with Brian Hartline, because he's still going to coach the wide receivers, but defensively, I wonder if this is what I need to run it. And he writes the grocery list up, and then the assistants go out and get the groceries. And they go and it's the assistant's job to find the best groceries that fit I need an orange. And then Tim Walton goes out there and he finds the best possible orange in the basket. And he brings that back. Hey, Larry, I don't even know what type of drink I'm making. I don't know. Whatever. I'm making a smoothie. This is what I need from each of you to make that smoothie.
You're on pace for orange juice right now.
Okay. Well, whatever. Is there an orange smoothie? Is that a thing?
I'm sure. I mean, there's green ones now, so.
All right. Well, whatever. Oh, fine. Yeah, green drink. This is what I'm making, a green drink. Okay. This guy's got to go get the kale. This guy's got to go get the celery. This guy's got to go get whatever else you put in green drinks. But you have to go get the best celery and the best carrots and the best kale that's out there. And that's the assistant coach's job. I don't know how this became a chef analogy, but that's what I got. Anything else you want to say on this matter? I think we did a good job of mixing in why we're skeptical, but also why we think this is potentially going to work. I thought this was fair.
Yeah, I think the moral of the story is that anyone who's hammering the table telling you this is going to fail or this is going to be a great success probably doesn't know what they're talking about.
No, it's in the middle.
Yeah. We just don't have an answer yet. We don't have an answer yet. So we're trying to provide what are the possible routes to this being a huge success? What are the routes to this being not a huge success? So it's hard to determine. It's just very intriguing because it's very rare that you get a coach hired as a defensive coordinator who hasn't been in that role for so long. And this is, and I'm like, obviously there's people who get hired as a first-time coordinator. Like, that's not the analogy I'm making here. It's very rarely does someone have that role, not have it for a while, and then have that role again at a high level, at a very respected program with a lot of success. So it's an interesting situation. We'll see how it pans out. And obviously we're going to be talking about it a lot, not over just the course of this offseason, but in the season as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. And yeah, I think it's, at the end of the day, it's kind of cool, I guess, that Ryan Day has a Belichick disciple in the building now, and we're going to get to talk to someone who's like stemming off Bill Belichick's brain. That's going to be very fascinating, and maybe he'll bring some Belichick mannerisms to the press conference. Hopefully not, for the sake of our jobs.
Please don't.
But
please don't.
We'll see what happens. I just like the idea of him coming in, and frankly, whoever Day down the road, whoever his coordinators are, this job is going to be very appealing if it is this Jim Knowles, Matt Patricia role of, we'll get you the ingredients, like you said. We got recruiters, elite recruiters around you. Can you scheme up? Can you be the head coach and just do what Chip Kelly did on the defense? I think it's very interesting. Who knows? Maybe Ryan Day is going to be an NFL GM in a few years.
We're giving Ryan Day all the titles today. That's probably worth asking too, because he has a criteria of how he evaluates his assistants, and recruiting is at the top of the list. I wonder if that list is different with coordinators, with how college football is set up. And I'll close with this. In terms of taking chances and guys who have maybe not done stuff before, we got to remember who we're talking about here. This is Ryan Day had never called plays before Urban Meyer asked him to come call plays, and it worked. Ryan Day had never been a head coach, and Gene Smith asked him to be a head coach, and it worked. So if you look at Day's hiring practices, he's constantly elevated guys who have never done stuff before. So the idea of him doing something where he's bringing in a guy who hasn't done something in 5-6 years now isn't shocking. So the idea of the hire isn't shocking, even if the name tag on the person who ended up being the hire is a little bit shocking. But we both understand that there's a optimistic and a pessimistic path that this could walk, even if both of us agree that more than likely the optimistic path is more than likely what's going to happen. Get the text 614-350-3315. You can yell at us there. I'm not responding to you on Twitter, but I'll respond to you in the text. I definitely 100% will respond to you in the text. I love our texters. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. For Stefan Krajisnik, I'm Stephen Means, and that was Buckeye Talk.